So I'm gonna put on the side rail because since we're working with the mannequin, we're gonna turn the mannequin over. In the patient's house, usually the bed is against the wall. It's not the ideal thing because sometimes you need to come around, especially if you wanna move a patient up. I showed you guys that, right? So if you wanna move the patient up because the patient slid down and you're alone, you're not gonna do this because you have no help. So you're able, right, if the bed has accessibility, you can stand behind the bed, right? So when you're behind the patients, you could put the 2 side rails up and ask the patient to help. Hopefully they'll be able to help. So they'll be able to use their arms to help, and you can then, by this, or even, I will pull out the sheets. I will pull out the sheets and then have the patient help. Let's say the patient is slid down to here. Right? Because the head was up and now they're slouching. So you put the brakes on the bed, and then when you go 1, 2, and 3, and between you and the patient helping you, you move. You'll only do like an inch. Remember body mechanics? You put your knee here and you use your leg to go back. Remember that?
Yes.
So you won't hurt your back. So you would go 1, 2, and 3. Maybe they move this much. It's okay. You grab it, go down again. 1, 2, and 3. And inch by inch, you'll have that patient up here. So I'm gonna now show you how to use a Hoyer lift. So I'm gonna put the side rail, which the bed should have a side rail. So we're gonna wash our hands, gather our supplies. So as long as you remember, wash my hands, gather my supplies, tell the patient what I'm gonna do, give the patient privacy, and raise the bed, you would never go wrong as long as you memorize that and you say that to yourself. So we're gonna open the wheelchair. You need to know where you're gonna have the wheelchair at. You need to prepare it. You need to make sure the brakes are working and that it's locked. Okay. And you need to make sure the belt is ready too. Because you always, for safety reasons, you always, as soon as you get a patient on a wheelchair, you put on the belt. Okay, now we have our supplies, right? So we're gonna, is all the metal in here? There's metal missing. It's assumed that when you're gonna move a patient from the bed, with a Hoyer lift, the patient is already clean, the diaper is clean, they've already been bathed. And if you have a bed patient and you make the bed with the patient on it, this is an opportunity to make the bed without the patient because it's more convenient. So I'm gonna start. We're giving the privacy and we're bringing the bed up. So what am I gonna do first? We're going to bring this down. So in order to get this swing under the patient, we need to turn the patient.
Yes.
So in order to turn the patient, there's 2 ways you turn a patient. In the direction that you're gonna go in, you usually take the leg, one leg, and you put it over the other. Right. Right. So when we turn a patient, we always turn from a joint, shoulder or the hip. And sometimes here, it depends, right? So but it's usually the hip because if you do this on the knee, right, you're looking? If you do this on the knee, look, you're hurting the hip.
Yeah.
So you usually do the hip and the shoulder and you turn them. And in order for their comfort, you can put a pillow there so that they won't, this is cold. So it won't harm them. So I'm gonna turn you over, okay? So here we go, 1, 2, and 3. You see how the arm landed perfectly? Right. So the patient, if they're alert, they should be, because if not, you don't take out unconscious people from beds, right? You're gonna hold her there, let's make believe that she's holding herself there, hold her, and she has a pillow. So now, this one has an opening. So for a patient who's not incontinent and is able to use the commode, you would take off the diaper and their butt precisely would go there. And you put them on the commode and take them out, right? Because if somebody is not incontinent, you don't tell them, do it on the bed. Just because, you don't want to be inconvenienced. You have to maintain their dignity if they're still continent, right? Eventually, when you're in a bed for a long time permanently, a person will become incontinent. So now, here, I usually measure so I can know that I'm gonna get it right. But normally this will end up, this ends where the knee, and then over here, right, where the upper shoulder, where the shoulder begins, is where this would be, okay? So we're gonna do this. Let me measure. And now we're gonna turn the patient back over. And without having to go to the other side, because like I said, most beds are usually against the wall. You're going to do the opposite here to the patient and put their arm here. You're gonna raise the knee or cross the legs. And you're gonna go, okay, I'm gonna turn you over this way, 1, 2, and 3. So now I'm holding my patient. And now we put it down. Great. How you feeling? Okay, good. Are you dizzy? But they all do basically the same thing. Now, in case you want to you're gonna get confused as to which direction does this face, like this or like this. Just think about it when the patient is on this. They're on a swing. If they're on a swing, they're gonna be going like this in the swing, right? So even if you're gonna forget, because a student can forget, right? Or if it's your first time, they can't swing like this. They can only swing here when they're sitting in here. So you're gonna do this because the patient is gonna go inside, because when we lift them, they're gonna be swinging. Right? So you should never be able to forget. Always look at this as a swing, and they're in there. Okay. Now you don't let them swing. So the machine. Let's tell you how to work the machine. This is the pump, and you pull it up and down. Go up and down with it, and it brings the Hoyer lift up. And you can move it like this or like that. So if it's in your way, there's no reason for it to ever be in your way, because you could get it out of your way. And then here's a button that you turn. Others have a valve that you move left to right, but this is a button that you move. And you see how it comes down? You never leave this unattended, because you don't want this ever to continue to go down. Let's say the patient's head is hit. Remember, this is a machine. The machine is going to continue to go down. So this one, you can help it. You can move it down a little. So now I'm going to take the shorter end, and I'm going to put it in the hole here. I need to lower the machine a little bit more. And be careful that we don't hurt the patient with the chain. Okay, so the shorter link will go here, right? And when you put the link in, this is like an S. It goes on outside, okay? It goes out. Why does it go out, and why won't you put it in? Because what? Because it could hurt the patient, right? Especially if it's a bigger patient. Once you get the patient can get hurt. So over here, you do the same thing. It always goes out. Always remember that. Okay, now we're gonna open the legs. Remember body mechanics? Anything we do, we have to open our legs to maintain balance. Well, here the machine has legs also. They're wide open, and it maintains the balance. This machine holds up to 450 pounds, and it cannot tip over. But remember what I said, if we're lifting up a package and we have our legs closed and you're lifting something up, you're gonna lose your balance. But if you have your leg open, shoulder width, you could bend down and pick up, and you're not gonna lose your balance. So the machine is the same way. You open the base and it stays firm. So, you see what I just did? You have to check and make sure that you secured all your connections. Why? And let me just see something. Let's just say that this is lower, right? Even though I put the chain in through here, through the link correctly. But you see, when it's laying flat, it can come out. Yes. So you don't want to notice that it came out when you have the patient in the air. So when you first begin, you lift the patient. Right? You gotta have your hands inside, miss. Put them inside. I don't want your hands getting hurt. Okay. Mannequin does what it wants to do. So, another thing you would do, given that this is a mannequin, and it doesn't weigh as much as a human, I have to help a little bit and make sure that it stays stable. So you see this, I gotta make sure that it's sitting. What you can do is, when you're working with the mannequin, you can bend its knees to make sure that the swing is ends right where the knee bends, right? So you don't want this slipping out. So I will continue. After I get it up like an inch or two, especially just 1 inch, I'm gonna check my connections. I'm gonna make sure that the S-link is inside and is perfectly connected before I move the patient. This is a safety check. Very good. So here we go. Now, what would you do now? So when I go to move the patient, you see the legs? Like I said, a lot of patients, they have pain in their legs. Some have very big legs. Yeah. If I did this, what am I doing? I'm dragging her legs. You don't drag their legs. It hurts. Yeah. So what you do is you move their legs. Okay, I'm gonna move your legs over. Now that you know the legs are not gonna get dragged, you start moving them. Right? Not only do you start moving them, but you make sure now that the patient is facing you. Look, they're in the swing. They're under the, whatever you want to call it, right? And they're in the swing. So now, if you can let me go, you can leave that there. I could have put it there. Wherever it is that you chose to put the chair, you will move the Hoyer lift too. And look, when you open the legs, it's also able to go around. You see how I'm able to fit it in? So when you're doing this, it's okay to get on the side. I will move this way because these are my controls. I want them facing me. So some of these swings, they have like, what do you call it? Like a part of it that you could grab and it can help you move the patient. This one doesn't, this was more old school. But the newer ones come with like a handle that you could pull them, right? Because you gotta make sure that the tailbone is exactly where the tailbone should be. If not, you gotta lift them up again and you gotta adjust them. Right? And even worse, if you disconnect them and they tell you lift me up, pull me up, now you gotta pull them up and you don't have the Hoyer lift anymore connected. So you wanna make sure that the tailbone is gonna come down exactly here. So you could use your knees. I usually come in, I hold the patient, and I use even my knees to help. I bring them down a little. Where's the? We're almost there. And there you go. Being that she's a mannequin, her head is not straight. Now, what's one of the things? She doesn't want to keep her head up. Now, one of the things that you have to make sure you do when you're putting the patient down, if your phone rings, the house phone rings, it could be that daughter that calls you a lot, and she wants you to answer. Well, you didn't answer the phone, I was calling, right? I was sorry, I was transferring your mama out of the bed. You never leave this unattended to go answer a phone or answer the door or do anything else. It doesn't matter how pressured you feel. There is no pressure. The only thing you will be concentrating on is this. So once you have your patient, and you gotta make sure that this does not hit the patient in the head. And okay, let's just give an example. Imagine if this continues to go down. And it continues, Lord knows, maybe that's why the mannequin's head is down, right? So let's say this continues to go down and go down and go down. Look what it's gonna do. And it's a machine, it's not gonna stop. It's not gonna say, oh, I'm touching a head, let me stop. You have to never, ever walk away while you're doing this. So now I locked it, so now we disconnect her. Since you're doing this to go to the living room, but if your patient does not have a visiting doctor, most bedbound patients have a doctor that visits the home. But if your patient still goes out to see the doctor and you have the patient dressed, you have to make sure, and they have a diaper, you need to put chucks, right? Before you lifted the patient over here on the bed, you would have had a whole setup with another drawer sheet and a whole bunch of chucks, and all of that would have gone under the patient right now because they can leak. Remember, if you're leaving at 8 in the morning for an appointment, you're going to be back at 3. That's 6 hours. You can't change them. So you want to make sure that, you know, the wheelchair and the swing stays clean, because this stays under. You never pull this out.